Hi, I'm Julie Harris. I'm a member of the Guilford Poets Guild. I have the great honor of sharing the companionship of our two artists tonight, Evelyn Atreya, Pat O'Brien. And I'd like to begin by telling you about Evelyn in her own words from her very beautiful new book, which I highly recommend to you, which will be available for purchase after the reading tonight. Evelyn Atreya is president of the Guilford Poets Guild. She is on the board of the Connecticut Poetry Society and is a member of its Greater New Haven chapter. She returned to Connecticut in 2000 after spending 35 years in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she was a researcher in child development at the University of Michigan. Through her extensive travels, she has learned much, mostly about herself. She now lives in Guilford, Connecticut, where in addition to her involvement in poetry, she is active in community service. Arts advocacy is important to her because she believes the arts not only nourish our spirit, but they are important to our survival. Evelyn Atreya.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's wonderful to see so many faces that I know in the audience. Welcome. I would like to begin with a poem that actually speaks to the arts and their importance to our spirits, our survival, and our healing. The name of the poem is Heaven Meets Earth, and it has an epigraph, tributary, one stream into a larger pool. She's a doctor. She heals the pains of others, but for her own, she always uses art. He, her lover, missing 3 weeks, found drowned. Tears of grief stream down her cheeks. He, an athlete, adventurer, and dreamer, charted his routes on maps. He had many. The maps she cuts and sews by hand, the hopes and dreams they spun. Her nimble fingers have stitched many a wound, but now it's her own heart she must mend. In and out with a needle, she pieces a missed future together. Tributary, she names her exhibit, a tribute to him. People come, friends and mourners, to remember him through her art. The room is darkened and becomes silent. Our collective grief is heavy and burdensome. Then, from each needle piercing, a light is emitted. The map collage, once just an earthly terrain, is showered with the luminous stars of our sky. Not a single eye is dry. Heaven meets earth at the horizon. Sky meets land. How ordinary. But when a channel runs between the two, extraordinary. So, the next poem I would like to share is one that came about when I was doing yoga. And as I would inhale deeply, the words would come to me. I breathe you in and hold you close. And then on a slow exhale, the words would come, absent but present, my loving ghost. And so I chose to use the form of a villanelle to write this poem. And so in this poem, you're going to hear those 2 lines repeated, which is part of the form. my loving ghost. I breathe you in and hold you close. I hear your voice sing our refrain, absent but present, my loving ghost. Together we loved our sunny coast. I'm 50 now, 20 you remain. I breathe you in and hold you close. I close my eyes, see you almost. I push smoke screens, search in pain. Absent but present, my loving ghost. Blue skies with leaves ablaze now boast. With orange then fall, a darkening stain. I breathe you in and hold you close. My endless yearning hurts me most. This scar I bear feels inhumane. Absent but present, my loving ghost. You radiate in me, I am your host. You're in my dreams on night's train. I breathe you in and hold you close. Absent and present, my loving ghost. And so, as Julie read, I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan for 35 years, and I knew I longed for the sound, the salt water and the sand, but I didn't know how much rocks really meant to me until I came back, and in how many ways they were important to me. And so a while ago, I wrote a poem called Rock I Am. And this is kind of my life journey in terms of rocks. Rock I am. It all started in a rocking chair, nestled in Grandma's arms, lulled to sleep, being rocked. Growing up, I learned that sticks and stones do break bones, but words like rocks can hurt even more. Summer meant swimming at the beach. Others would scavenge for sea glass. I sifted the sand for purple quartz granules. We fell in love and earned our degrees at nearby New Haven colleges with East Rock and West Rock bookends. Hiking was a shared joy and pain. Sun-heated rocks on the trail relieved our aching muscles. A sparkling rock on my wedding finger weighed me down. My 10-foot shadow on a massive boulder doing the warrior yoga pose captured my independence. Stacked rocks are my trail markers. 5 flat rocks stacked on my railing, and sure, I will not lose my way. Chiseled into pink Stony Creek granite, my gravestone will read, "She rocked." And so the first section of this book is about my travels, and I was lucky to travel many places in the world. And probably the most memorable trip was a climb up a very high mountain, Mount Fuji in Japan, at night to see the sunrise. So that's 12,835 feet. And just to let you know, it's not a trail that is groomed and you just go up and up and up. It's a lava boulder field. And so you go over and around boulders all the way up, and there are chain link fences that keep you enclosed so you can't wander off. So anyway, this is Fuji-san. How different it feels here, so unlike woodcuts and haiku. Under a black umbrella sky, we trudge snails for 8 hours, following our flashlight beams, maneuver around jagged lava chunks, and push uphill through exhaustion, pain, and head-spinning lack of oxygen. Excuse me. Private joke. The sunrise will not wait. On top of Fujisan at last, skies are clear as daybreak nears. No need to take sparklers from my pocket. We'll celebrate with sunshine. We cluster at the summit's edge. Monks chant and drum as a speck of orange crowns the awakening. And so, one of my favorite walks around here is going to Hammonasset and walking out to Meg's Point. And I love the erratic rocks, the huge boulders that came in with the Ice Age. And I was out there a while ago, and all of a sudden, one of those rocks looked like the head of Shakespeare to me. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a sonnet to Shakespeare. Too daunting. Never did that. And then, you know, I was thinking of The Tempest. And so anyway, one day, all of a sudden, that boulder spoke to me. And this is what it said. Let me speak. Can you hear my gravelly voice over the squawk of seagulls? I have heard you amuse many with pointing out how much I, a massive glacial boulder, look like Shakespeare. You enchant listeners by pointing out what looks like my huge head with brows angled back as if to keep my nose above water. This, my friend, is not your imagination. Here I rest, my name and works still well known, yet I feel remorse at my arrogance. I took freely from others and used their imaginations as my own. I never gave poor Bandello credit for his tale of Romeo and Juliet. I didn't change characters' names or even Verona, the town's name. Truth be told, I've never been to Italy. Tell your friends the truth. Let them know of my sadness, of my heavy heart turned to stone as each wave crashes against my chin. Be assured, real tears stream down my cheeks. And then there was another poem that came to me in a kind of not a direct way. I really like Billy Collins's poem, Walking Across the Atlantic. And so he starts off after the holiday crowd goes and he heads for Spain. And so at first he's thinking about seeing whale spouts, and then he's thinking about being lulled by the waves, and then he's thinking of that very moment. What are the fish thinking, looking up and seeing his feet going up and down? So I immediately thought, wow, what would it be like to be a mermaid beneath Billy Collins's Nikes? And I tried to write that poem, but that mermaid didn't have anything to say. It was completely silent. And I listened, and all of a sudden another woman had a lot to say, and that was Billy Collins's wife. And this is what she had to say. All you need is you. Beachgoers return home, as I will, to prepare our dinner. You choose to stay with your favorite companion, imagination. You won't be home for dinner, I know. You'll stay crafting a poem of your adventure, walking across the Atlantic like a god. Later, you'll return to eat leftovers at your computer as your fingers prance on the keyboard. Your chuckling will interrupt my sleep. One poem will lead to another. Soon you'll send in a manuscript, a book published, sales skyrocket. Adoring fans crowd your readings. Yesterday, you told our marriage counselor you've never been happier. As for me, I miss being your window, having you be my hinge. And then just two more, then we'll have that. And two short ones. And so gardening is a big part of my life. I'm not as passionate about it as poetry, I guess. And so this one is in two parts. The first part is from the husband's point of view, and the second part is from the wife's point of view. And it's called Mr. and Mrs. Newly Retired. 1. Armchair adventure is my antidote to the sameness of retirement. Sitting in my sunlit study, I read Inspector Montalbano mysteries, peppered with ravishing women and corrupt men on Palermo's gritty streets. Looking out at my wife of 35 years in our rose garden, I lament, if only she'd give me as much attention as those roses. 2. Wearing my large-brimmed sun hat with pruners in hand, I deadhead spent roses to encourage more blooms. I pause to inhale the magnificence of a golden gleam blossom, but my joy turns to gloom, thinking of my husband inside reading as he's done since retirement. He has no interest in real life. If only he'd care for me like I care for our roses. And then this last one. So there's a section in the book that is a series poem on the plants in my garden. And I'm just going to read the first short one. So this series is called Guilford Garden. And this poem is to say how lucky I am to, I always get teary when I say this, to have planted my roots here in Guilford and to know all of you people.
Nice.
So this is the last one. Little Hosta orphans, saved when the library expanded, joined my family on my little piece of earth the year I moved here. I planted them in my shady backyard border. Green, giant, heart-shaped leaves with a wisp of white, cool and serene, even on the hottest days. They grow and beg to be divided. Offspring fill vacant spots. Others I give to friends. My family is taking root all over town.
And for those of us who have had the pleasure of seeing Evelyn's beautiful garden, we are equally as grateful. Now about our second poet. And by the way, This is her beautiful book, which is also for sale following our reading. Pat O'Brien has written poetry for as long as she can remember. After completing her social work degree at Columbia, Pat was lucky enough to attend literature and poetry classes taught by outstanding teachers. She has been an active member of the Guilford Poets Guild and more recently helped to co-found Connecticut River Poets. Her work has appeared in many journals, including Poet Lore, Connecticut River Review, and the Connecticut Review. It has also received awards from the Trumbull Arts Council, Acton Public Library, and Embers Magazine. For over 20 years, Pat has been assimilating the valuable teachings of the Shambhala Buddhist tradition, learning to practice two of its vital principles. Don't be attached to an outcome, and be open to all possibilities. Pat O'Brien.
So, I'd like to open with a poem that's actually I used as the epigraph for my book. And it's a poem by Richard Teachin, who we lost all too early. It was through Richard that I was invited into the Guilford Poets Guild. He introduced me to it, and then he went and left. So we are very sad that we don't have him around, but I think his words make a perfect start for any poetry reading or any look at life. It's called Right Now. Happiness is what I want to tell you about. The getting and having, the measuring. Here, live in the same place for 5 years. Watch the cars on the road. Wash your dishes in the morning and try to see you will never get another chance to be all-knowing, powerful, and wise. Living won't always make you happy, but when you are, you'll know why. Yeah, Richard. He died in 2009. Oh my gosh. I know. Yeah. We miss him. What struck me as I was pulling together some poems for tonight is how parent and child-centered they are. So I found it was kind of a running theme. So I hope not too heavy-handed in any case, but both the view of children, or a child, me in this case, of life, and then later as parents, as we see our own children. I was raised in the Bronx on the 7th floor of a building in Parkchester, which is a huge complex built by Metropolitan Life. And God, this dates me. 1946 was a big blizzard, and I decided that would be a wonderful adventure to be out in this blizzard. And at some point, and this is all I remember of the event, was looking out and realizing that there was just this blanket of white as far back as I could see and as far forward. I saw no rescue, no hope, no nothing. So that's the only image. I know I'm here, so I made it back. But what I've done is try to reconstruct what happened that day. So the second stanza is my imagining how it could have been. Winter's child, she no longer recalls what brought her to that exact spot where hers was the only breath, hers the only eyes marking the endless distance ahead, the endless distance back. her boots, weighted snow casts of her feet and icy socks refused to rise out of their snowbound holes, wondrous traps she'd made herself. She wonders now what she has added to that late day storm. The missing sun. In their 7th floor window, her mother's face in an oval of steam. One by one, the apartment house lights twinkling on. Her father, sober and home on time, swooping her off the elevator, tugging off her boots, laughing, rubbing her feet and hands warm. I have a story that most people that know me know by now, that as a young woman, I had a child that I surrendered for adoption. And after that event, I fell into, as some other persons who've gone on this journey, feel like you've fallen down the hole and down the rabbit hole. Nothing makes sense. Life loses its meaning, its way forward. So I went home for a year and kind of pulled myself back and moved back into New York City where I had been living. And this, I had it to read. This is a poem that's a tribute to spirit. I read this at a little gathering of women at St. Paul's Church, and I was assured by them that the language was okay, so I'm hoping that you'll use the same standards. What it took to wake up. It might have come too late to be considered by most good luck, but there it was. A railroad apartment on 89th between First and York, and a job with the city of New York for $5,040 a year. Add to that having Harvey Tischler in my DSS unit, gay as paint, who taught me by example the art of saying fuck right in the middle of a sentence. Right in the middle of every sentence. And hearing him, I awoke from a year of sorrow-induced sleep in which no life stirred other than the quickening life I carried to term and promptly surrendered with all the right prompting. What could stir me from the trance of a mother gone amiss? Nothing, until Harvey blew in our door every workday, noting how every fucking thing was wrong and how the fuck was he supposed to get going, and I said, how the fuck is right? I'm happy to tell you that 20 years later, I met my son. He's now a vital part of our family. We have 4 grandchildren through him and very close and wonderful relationships. So it's a happy thing. I didn't know that then, right? Yeah. You don't know that. So motherhood. I had a friend who told me that, in confidence, that her teenage daughter, she discovered, was having a tryst at night after she had gone to bed, that this young man was coming into her house. So somehow she got wind of it. And this is my addressing her, the mother. Night lights. You were the last to hear how a man bearing shadows, snared from the moon, entered your house after you slept. Your daughter's fair hair let down to draw him in. Or with her hair wound at the nape of her neck, how she opened the back door, how he shut out the moon. By day, you had not guessed the difference, the significance of the sleep she could not cast off. Now that you've told her what you know, she laughs at such an imaginative tale, offers her bobbed hair as evidence. And though she has won your kiss good night, under the window of your dreams, her uncertain light moves by. And then there's those children that you have and you think, where did he come from? I was very glad to read in the New York Times, there was an article saying, some children are born difficult. I said, oh thank God, it wasn't all my fault. But these children grow up and they become parents themselves, and it's a wonderful moment, and this is a story about that. Called Around We Go, from Michael Shawn. I think of the times I wanted to grind your foot beneath a polite, quiet table. Or when I could haul you around, how often I'd have to leave the room, you're fussing more than a mother could forestall with kisses or a breast's sweet offering. Such a sour start for a boy whose eyebrows arched like angels' wings. My motherliness, poor match for a night sleepless from cries no rightful angel would let loose. So just when did you earn those angel wings? Well, maybe not, but close enough to fly this house and settle in a house with two prickly angels of your own. Enough to maintain without a thought that you would want to die before life flies from either of your winged girls. Mothers, during the Iraq War, the news was always so devastating, and the images of, you hear on the radio, images of communities that people couldn't leave their own homes. They were trapped inside because everything had turned to rubble, and trying to create some sense of safety and security in the midst of all of that horror. And so although one can't put oneself exactly in the shoes of a person in that situation, you can be that mother for a moment. You can enter what must be her day. So, the measure of safety is the title, and I have in Kabul, Hama, Damascus, and today in Beirut, there was another bombing. So it seems to go on and on. So this is in the voice of the mother. I know the map of this kitchen. I know how many paces from its south wall to its north, how many east to west. I know the measure of its sugar and salt, the measure of oil, a gauge by its weight. I know from its window the point our street vanishes into the rubble of our neighborhood, a street that once had no vanishing point. I know the breathing of our children, asleep in the next room. They're whimpering sleep. Awake, my children, imagine I know how to keep them safe. In dreams, danger seeps through every measured wall. I have 5 more poems. Are we going to go right? Everybody? Okay. We can do it. Okay, so I'm lucky to have my husband here. And he used to travel a lot. Go on the road, and he'd leave sometimes Sunday night, sometimes Monday morning, and be gone. But when he was home, it was his felt duty to keep us safe. So every door got locked, every window got, are you sure everything is locked? Yes, I'm sure everything. Yeah, it was kind of an ongoing battle of what safety meant. So I don't remember when I wrote this, but obviously close to the time in which he was taking off and I was left with my locked windows and my locked doors. It's called Trips. When you go away on business or some other pressing matter like your mother's insistence, I plan to take the locks off all the windows you shut each night to keep us safe from sorrow and the loss of our silver. The moment I calculate the wheels of your craft are tucked up useless spheres, I will run from lock to lock, slamming their half-moons out, forcing each window its height. I have dreamed of being blown across the room, of suffering the vapors. At night, I will be tickled by the fear of thieves. I gauge that when your wheels hit ground again, I will have been stolen, your children gobbled up. But we survived. And it strikes me, I didn't arrange the poems in this book, and Rennie McQuilkin, the publisher, did, and so it's really interesting that the second poem here, on the opposing page, is a conversation between my husband and I, and we were at Founder's Landing, which is this beautiful spot that overlooks the Connecticut River. It's an absolutely gorgeous spot. And it was a fall day, and this poem sort of came out of, so it's Summer's End. And I'm referring to them in the third person. Us. Their conversation is of everyday stuff, wondering when they should stop mowing the lawn, wondering how long to allow for their trip south, wondering when to close up the house, and wondering if their 3 sons in 3 places are roaming under the same suns that dazzling this bay, and wondering if they're not overcome by its brazenness. Or does that wondering actually come later on as the sun's shadows steal the day? Oh, of course, it isn't the sun's shadows, but all the objects in its way. The still-leafed weeping willow, the billowy field of marsh grass, their own car making its way home. He drives, and she lets sun and shadow cross her drowsiness. She thinks of how he had stopped ahead of her at the overlook, and how long it seemed before he turned back. So that's a few from my wanted to share a couple more recent poems. I just wanted to show off a little bit, not so much my own work, but this is a broadside that was made with the help of Perennial Design. This is a couple that has this wonderful collection of old printing presses. So this is a letterpress design, and it's his paper, and he in a very modern way was able to grab this image off of it online, but you can see it's a car, right? 1940s or 50s. Yeah. So it was a fun thing to do. This is again a child's point of view, and the only image I have of this day is I was driving with my father, and I was about 10, maybe 11. We went by a big hill, and I looked at the hill and I said, it's so big and I'm so little, and what if I were to die? And I were buried in that hill. Nobody would ever know. I'd be lost. And so this is a story that's all really I remember. And there's an epigraph here too, and it's a line from the old lullaby, sleep my child and peace attend thee all through the night.
Yeah.
So I think the epigraph came after I read the poem, because there's kind of a haunting that went into the writing of the poem, called So Soon. I was too young to drive when we rounded the hill. I imagined myself dead and buried in. What was it about that rise toward knotty woods drew me to its unattended sleep? I turned to my father at the wheel to find his profile stilled by the need to keep his eye on what lay ahead. And we drove and drove past hill after hill without a word, and I never asked, and he never said. I have an insane poem. We, both Guilford Poets Guild and Connecticut River Poets, have been writing poetry to the exhibits at the Florence Griswold Museum, and one of them was Harry Hoffman, who's an abstract artist. And so again, you're not going to really be able to see it, but I can just tell you that there's these huge blocks of black and red and white. And that's my poem. That's awesome. Became a block. And it was mentioned that I'm a practicing Buddhist, and so the notion of emptiness is very mysterious to me. So I don't quite get it, but it's fun to kind of grapple with it. So the idea of emptiness is not that it's void, but that it's got the potential for everything. So that was the notion. That, and my having been raised in Parkchester on the 7th floor of a building that looked a lot like So I thought, here is a structure that is empty and yet can hold everything. So hang on to your seats. And there's a quote here from the Heart Sutra that I'll just read a little bit from. Sariputra, form does not differ from emptiness, emptiness does not differ from form. Form itself is emptiness, emptiness itself is form. So you got it? 2160 East Tremont Avenue, the Bronx. No window, no false door, no doorman, no steep hill, no radio, no snap-on, no whistle, no cigar, no long list, no swing set, no push cart, no hey you, no late night, no night light, no shadow, no entry, no escape, no desire, no today, No lost thing, no fool, no bra hook, no takeout, no AC, no sideboard, no highball, no trimmed hedge, no high mark, no small crack, no pulled shade, no sunrise, no cockroach, no brown bag, no homework, no bride's dress, no embrace, no landlord, no last cent, no first thing, no trial run, no orange peel, no pulled hair, no clothesline, no curveball, no staircase, no drop note, no latchkey, no regret, no voicemail, no pink slip, no MD, no quick left, no mistake, no dove perch, no rough night, no wet mop, no clock set, no love nest, no time loss, no strange face, no repair, no Greek god, no sidekick, no save day, no textbook, no brain, SCAN, no ringtone, no ride home, no blind mice, no thing. I didn't hear it.
I said no fucking thing.
All right, so this last one, again, this is kind of a show and tell, but some of you have been to the little production that my friend Judy Perry and I and Jerry Silbert, who's a guitarist, had put on together. Judy is an artist friend of mine who was in a near fatal crash with a drunk driver. And she was an accomplished portrait artist before this accident. And after the accident, most people are on ventilators and in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. She was recovering slowly, but she looked at paintbrushes and said, "What are they?" So she had a friend who was an artist who said, "I'm coming over." So she came over, and what they did was take old paintings. She had sketchbooks and those kind of things. Took them and cut them up and created a piece of art. So this is it. And that was her first work back. She's, by the way, her seascapes are over the table in the other room, and you'll see she's coming back in all her glory and walking and driving and doing great. So anyway, so I wrote poems for her work. Some of the work before her accident, some as she's been creating work after the accident. And again, I think the Buddhist idea of a gap is really important. The gap is where everything is open. Nothing is settled. It's all potential. So the name of this poem, and it's also the first line of the poem, is, "So here's the scatter and the gap at once." And the painting is called Scatter. So here's the scatter and the gap at once. The scatter that wakes you from the trance, that made you think you had it right, that you were in charge, that life is as certain as the toast you're going to make when you get out of bed, as certain as your plan to call your friend, certain as the front door, the key in your hand. Then comes the cracking up, the break apart that tears you from your certain breakfast, that takes your friend, that blasts your door off its hinges and leaves you with the useless key you fling across the grass. Maybe it's then it begins. You let yourself collapse before the altar of this mess. You take a breath. You say, "Of course." You say, "Oh yes." And in a day, or week, or a slew of weeks, you stand up in the gap that comes when you abandon all you thought you knew and open to whatever happens next. Thank you.